one of those deals where, hey, it's 50-50, you kill it or it kills you in 5 years. It's treatable but not curable. I'm like, okay, what's option C? And it ended up being somewhere between the first two. And my father-in-law was, life, when you picture family doctor, that's who he was. And um, the way he explained it to my kids at the time, he said, "Hey, your dad's got a fighting chance to be a Paul or Grandpa someday."
That's Jason Gallman. Jason's been a member of our community since about 2023. And in this episode, I talked to Jason about his story, which is a very intense but also inspiring one. Jason is a husband, a father, and a grandfather. And as you're soon going to find out, he has a remarkable outlook on life and a great attitude, even after being given some scary news about his health. Jason is an all-around gentleman. He's a warrior, and I really think you're going to like this episode. Here it is. Jason, how are you?
Doing fantastic. How are you, Taylor?
I'm doing good. It's nice to finally meet you here face to face.
Yeah,
It's funny being a coach who works online, having an online platform. You're
right.
talking with members all the time, and you have all these interactions, but you don't get to meet all of these folks face to face. So this is cool, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast to talk about your story today.
Yeah, thankful for the opportunity.
So I guess a good place to start would just be to have you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself. At this point, I know bits and pieces of
Sure.
who you are and your story, but why don't we just start with who are you? What do you do? I don't even know where you live, so let's cover that stuff.
Okay, there you go. So I live in Greenwood, Indiana, which is a suburb just south of Indianapolis. So just kind of a mid-sized town.
Mm-hmm.
My wife Kim and I will celebrate 33 years of marriage this summer,
Nice.
and we've kind of been on this fitness journey together. We were actually, believe it or not, we were middle school sweethearts.
Oh.
So been together forever. Kind of a sickeningly sweet story. But it's Valentine's Day today, right?
Yep, it is. It is.
So three adult kids, 30, 27 and 25, and then two granddaughters, almost 4 and 2. So yeah,
Excellent.
so husband, dad, now I'm a pop. So tonight's actually a Gigi and Pop sleepover night. So we've got the grandbabies, so have to take a nap.
I was gonna say you better gear up. It's almost go time.
It's different, right? I mean, you get that tolerance build up when you're going through it. I know you're in that stage, but you kind of forget and have to gear up again for it.
Oh man, it's
It-
a wild stage to be in because
yeah,
I'd like to say that I've got the energy and conquer it, but man, I wish I could take a nap.
right. I look back and I think, oh wow, how did I do that? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but for about the last 15 years, I've worked as a pastor at a church here in town, and then prior to that, I was a high school English teacher, football coach, and I've kind of coached volunteer in a volunteer capacity most of my life, probably at least up until the pandemic or so.
That's
So that's
cool.
always been a big part of of who I am.
Nice. That's awesome. So, the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast was because you've got a wild story.
Yeah,
And I only know bits and pieces of it through our exchanges between, inside our direct messages and in the community. And at this point now, you've actually been inside our community for a while, and you're currently in our membership, and you have even done the Neuro Dojo, our
right,
advanced course.
right.
So you've really seen a lot of what we do, right? And you've
Yeah,
experienced a lot of the philosophy, and I am really fascinated to learn more about your story because it's an intense one. And I
mhm,
think what really stands out to me, particularly one of the last exchanges that we had after we just wrapped up our Neuro Dojo course, where you reached out to me and you posted in our community about what you were currently practicing.
Mhm.
with all of the material that you had been introduced to through us, for, I don't know, has it been, how long have you been inside of our membership and doing our
I was
programs?
looking back. I think it was about October of 23
Okay.
when I joined.
Okay. All right.
So
So after that
yeah,
Neuro Dojo course, when you summarized what you had been practicing, I was like, wow, this is legit. Like
yeah,
you really are organized and clear in what you're practicing, and you're really going after it. And it's been really cool to learn about some of the progress that you've had along the way. So what I want to do is have you talk about your health history a little bit and
yeah.
this wild story. And from there, I have some other questions about, what interested you in getting involved with our programs. But let's begin with your history, with whatever you're comfortable sharing,
Yeah,
and we'll let it unfold from there.
sure. Yeah. Well, I'll try to keep it at the right level of detail. Um, so it really goes back. Um, so when I was 36 years old, so that's a little over 18 years ago, I was training for a half marathon, and played sports growing up. I I'm from Indiana, so of course you had to play a little basketball, but
Yep.
football's bigger on the rise now. So football, basketball, baseball, football in high school, football all through college, and then really never sick, no problems. Just some kind of residual football junk, right? But then I was training for this half marathon, was experiencing a lot of fatigue. My running buddy was a smoker, and he was struggling to keep up with me, and then I couldn't keep up with him. And wow, something's wrong.
Hmm.
I went in one day in April, did a CT scan. They found a big tumor in my small intestine, and I was, surgery, chemo, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Wow.
Um, one of those deals where, hey, it's 50-50. You kill it or it kills you in 5 years. It's treatable but not curable. I'm like, okay, what's option C?
Yeah.
And it ended up being somewhere between the first two. And my father-in-law was, life, when you picture family doctor, that's who he was. And
Yeah.
um, the way he explained it to my kids at the time, he said, "Hey, your dad's got a fighting chance to be a Paul or grandpa someday." So
Mm.
like, all right, so got over that. Had the surgery, chemo, immunotherapy, and then really no problems. Went back to teaching. That fall, and then I'm cruising along. I had knee stuff, shoulder stuff. I was coaching. I was running back coach and had the blessing of coaching my boys. And there was one time on film when one of our kids had kind of scoop and score, big thing, and all the coaches are running down the sideline, and you could see me on film, and I'm just hobbling. So everybody's rewinding the film. Let's watch coach here. Do all that. So I'm like, hey, I got to do something about that knee. Did kind of the usual cortisone. I went through every stretching thing, all that. And eventually, had to get cut on. But in 2020, I had what's called a spinal cord stroke,
Right. And this
which
is,
I
I
didn't
remember.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, and I really still don't know much about what that
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
so I was sitting in this office that I'm in right now, and I might always had some kind of leg pain, back pain, that kind of thing. So I'm kind of stretching, and pain just gets worse and worse. And I live about 5 minutes from the church, and I get home, and by the time I get home, my bladder shut down, bowel shut down.
Whew.
I can barely get out of the van. Thank God my wife was home, took me to the ER. By the time we got there, I had to be in a wheelchair, the whole thing, and then ended up in a different hospital. Spent 8 days in a big research hospital, every test under the sun, and they eventually called it a spinal cord stroke.
Wow.
But the way it presented itself was, I'll spare you all the technical stuff, but basically from the bottom of my feet, back of my legs, glutes, all that went numb.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even to this day, it's about 10% numb. So I can always, nothing's just perfect. I
Right.
regained, all my important functions and all that, but for several weeks, I couldn't get up on my toes. And
Wow.
even to this day, it's a little harder to get up on my left side. And I had all kinds of muscle atrophy, over the years. I mean, that went, kind of quick. And,
Yeah.
really neurologists are fine and all that, but, hey, here's a little gabapentin,
Yes. Right.
and not real helpful. Did a little bit of PT. And one of the PT things that the gal did was a nerve glide.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that was probably the only thing that kind of, at the time I didn't really understand it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
Looking back, I kind of get it. So anyway, that stuck in my brain as a helpful thing. So recover from that, get back to work, in a couple weeks, little over a year goes by. I get the knee replaced, did all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, relatively smooth. And then about a year ago, went in kind of for my annual physical. I'd had a few kind of old man symptoms and that kind of thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
had a PSA blood test, which is kind of what you get after 50. And that, that's a prostate specific antigen. And there's a marker. And if it's elevated, that buys you a trip to the urologist and all that. So that happened. It was high. I thought, this, you know, with my history, it's probably something weird.
Yeah.
But we were thinking more kind of, in prostate cancer world, which is what I also ultimately got diagnosed with. As long as it's in the prostate, it's not that big a deal. You can have radiation, you can have surgery. It's inconvenient, but it's not going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Once it gets outside, then you got problems.
Right.
So, I did the MRI, did the fancy PET scans and biopsy and the whole thing, and was diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer, which is stage 4, which is so I had some spots in my bones in my pelvis. So I had
Mm-hmm.
3 spots. So um, and then yeah, so then set out, on a course of treatment, and one of the um, things with the treatment, it's a complex disease, complex treatments, and they, initial diagnosis was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, and I'm the type, I research everything. I watched a YouTube video of my knee surgery before I did it. So I'm like, all right, let's, I mean, there's the shock and it's hard, and but the doctor's like, well, they always give you those median survival rates, and which statistics are statistics, and I
Right.
don't put too much
Yeah.
weight in that. But at the same
Yep.
time, when somebody says, ah, maybe 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
that's not very good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's intense.
It's pretty intense, and so went through a lot of work, tried to get the right doctor, right treatment plan, all that, and was blessed to get a good team at a university hospital, here in Indianapolis, just 20 minutes or so, from our house.
Nice.
And then I started hormone therapy. So the way prostate cancer treatment works, the most effective treatment is hormone therapy, which is where, because testosterone feeds cancer, prostate cancer, I mean, directly. Once you shut that off, it's like the fuel source is gone, it doesn't grow.
Yeah.
which is great, until it doesn't work anymore, and you've got, pretty significant side effects to deal with that. So
Right.
they put me on the hormone therapy, and then did a bunch of radiation this summer on both the prostate and then the Met sites, and then as of now, I don't have to do chemotherapy, which is kind of nice. But
Yeah.
I'm on the hormone therapy indefinitely.
Yeah.
That's forever. So, dealing with the reality of no testosterone, fatigue, and it really hits all your systems
Yeah.
because
Yeah. I bet.
you weren't made to not have testosterone.
Right.
So, one of the things that the doctor said initially, and those guys are never super optimistic at the beginning. I think that's just how they're trained.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, we don't run out of treatments, but we do run out of people who can tolerate them." you know,
Ah. Yeah.
Basically, your body can't take it anymore, and you can't do any more treatment.
Right.
So the way the treatments work, it's you do the frontline hormone therapy, and then you kind of a combination type therapy is the direction they're going now. So, they're throwing the kitchen sink at me. And right now I'm in a pretty good spot where the scans are good, the PSA is good. So I probably have a better longer term outlook than what he initially thought.
Yep.
But there's still no cure. So you're still living with the reality of a shorter life and less energy.
Right.
Yeah, so that's kind of the medium-sized version of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're left with decisions to make, and you've made the one to, fight. And and man, you look good. So you're doing something right now.
Right.
You got to be doing something that's helping you out. And actually,
Yeah.
I wanted to just barely rewind, and because I'm thinking about the timeline that you've shared. And
Yeah.
so if I'm correct, when you started getting involved with our material and our programs, that would have been before this last diagnosis.
Yes.
So I would assume that you were sort of hunting for things that could help you with your goals at the time. This would be post spinal cord stroke.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would love to know is, you said that you had found Alicia and I in 2023,
Mhm.
and I don't know how you found us, really.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to know that story and what stood out to you about what we were doing that made you go, well, maybe I should lean in a little further and see what this is and if there's anything there for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So um, I won't preach a sermon, but I'm going to say it's the kindness of God that I found y'all, and I don't say that flippantly. And one of the ways Kim and I have processed all this is, in the midst of a crappy diagnosis, how do you find, you know, goodness and all that? So
Yeah.
just a great blessing, whether through the evil algorithms of Instagram, I don't know, but I've been one of those guys that's always, my daughter's you know, she's got her doctorate, she's an OT, she's 30, she's an expert. And she always makes fun of me because I'm kind of a DIYer on that kind of stuff. Because for the most part, the traditional medical system hasn't been all that helpful
Sure.
in certain ways.
Right.
So anyway, so I'm always, I'd done lacrosse ball stuff. My people make fun of me because I'd go everywhere with a lacrosse ball, and it's like, well, you got to give Jason 20 minutes before we do anything because he's got to do something, right?
Yep.
And so my algorithms, probably led me somehow to you. And I don't know if it was one of your nerve glides or something where I'm like, okay, that makes some sense. And there was something about even just Taylor, the way you present, just, no BS, super clear. You've got your shirt on. It's a good thing. Right? I mean, there's no hype. It's just, well, I like what this guy offers. You know, I,
That's good.
I like what he does, and maybe I can trust him. And you know, and I think I'd gotten a trap bar off of Amazon. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
well, I need to be working on the posterior chain, trying to get that. And I think I tweaked my back moving the stupid bar with no weight.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I got to do something different here.
Yeah.
So this isn't working. So I'm like, I start checking out your stuff. I don't know, maybe tried a nerve glide or something and
Yep.
found it. And like, okay, I was curious. And then I did one of your free, it wasn't one of your free challenges. I think it was like one of your courses or,
Oh yeah, maybe it might have been a master class for one of our
yeah,
courses that we teach. Yep.
yeah, yeah. And I'm just kind of going along. It's like, oh, you know, the whole assessment process I thought was cool. There was one dude that was giving you a hard time, like this was all, you know,
Hocus
manipulation,
pocus.
hocus pocus. And you're like, dude, we just had a group of people. Some got better, some got worse, you know. And I thought I liked the way you handled that. I'm like, all right, let's give this a shot. So, uh, you know, I'm pretty cheap, so I tend to get free things as long as I can.
Yeah.
But to the point where, well, you know, hey, why not? Why not? You know, it's I don't know, 20 some bucks a month. Let's give it a shot. And then started the workouts. And you know, I don't know that I've had any significant back pain since then.
Oh, that's great.
You know, and if I get a little bit, it's like I know how to, you know, I've got strategies on it.
Oh
So
man, that's music to my ears because that's the key
yeah,
is having the
yeah,
strategies.
yeah. So anyway, so I'm like, I'll try this thing and did that.
Yeah, and at that point, what do you think your main goals were?
To be able to um yeah, reduce pain.
Hmm.
You know, the cancer hadn't hit yet. So I mean I had it, but I didn't know it.
Yep.
Uh you know, Kim and I walk a ton, hike a ton. That's an important thing to us. So I'm like, okay, I got to be able to do that. You know, uh, starting to get some grandbabies here. Need to be able to roll around on the floor and that kind of
Right.
stuff. So in general, pain reduction, but really, you know, and we'd gotten into a lot of some of the big name folks with just longevity research, and Kim and I are both into that. Actually built a sauna in our basement. I mean, who does that,
Nice.
right? And you know, we're just kind of uh, and you know, we're empty nesters, all that, and like, okay, well, how do we maximize this season of life? You know,
Hmm.
and Kim's a just super disciplined, works out all the time, but she doesn't have any issues. So she's blessed. She didn't have to do any of the stuff I do just to work out.
Yep.
So I'm like, well, I want to lower my pain. I want to be able to do some things.
Yep. Nice to have a supportive,
Yeah,
supportive person there to, be
yeah,
like, oh, sure, build a sauna in the basement.
sure, right, right. And so that's kind of it's our hobby. We do it together, which is great.
That's awesome.
I feel for people that they're as a couple they're not on the same page. You got one person all in and one not, and we've always both been all in. We do different things, but support each other.
That's
You know,
great.
yeah. So anyway, so I'm in the membership. I'm doing the workouts, and I'm like, a lot of this stuff it's all good, but I'm trying to understand it at a deeper level.
Hmm.
You know, and I got a busy, stressful job. You know, busy. You know, I don't have a lot of time. I mean, uh, you know, I think I jumped in on some of the calls, maybe. Um, Trying to remember the order of things. Yeah, there was one
Yeah,
call.
so like some of the educational calls.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
actually something I was curious to ask you about because I always try to I think about this a lot because we have people that come into our membership and like you initially they're like, all right, what do I have to lose? Let me start some of these workouts.
yeah,
And some of those people go quite a while without even realizing that there's this this other level to the membership
Right.
where if you're interested, and you don't have to be interested. We actually have quite a few people who are just there to do our programs, and they don't they don't lean into the additional education. We have some people that are there only for the education. They love learning the neuro, but they don't necessarily do, the other programs. So everyone's there for a slightly different reason. I always wonder what it's like kind of coming into the membership, discovering that there's this other level to it, that if you have that interest, you can start to do that. And I definitely could see right away that you had that interest. So
Right.
that's good to know. So you started then watching some of the live calls.
Right. I did. And there was one call in particular, and I think it was before I got diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
But it all kind of runs together.
Yeah.
But you were talking about, I don't know, I can't remember if it was right before or right after, but you're talking about air hunger and
Breathing. Yeah. Breathing
breathing drill,
exercises. And yep.
and I was like, uh, actually, I think it was, yeah, I'm just going to say it was right after the diagnosis. And one of the things with my diagnosis is I didn't feel any different. It's not like,
Yeah. Isn't that weird? That must be a very
yeah,
challenging position to be in.
right, right. And, it's like now, there's obviously threat and all that.
Right.
Pretty big on your threat bucket.
Yeah.
But one of the things was I started really getting into breath ladders,
Mm-hmm.
and I would walk in the park.
You wanted to win the breath ladder. Now I know you.
Right,
I know you just a little bit better, and I bet
right,
that's what you were
right. I'm
thinking.
like I'm okay. I'm up to 15. I'm up to
Yeah.
16. And then I'm doing like uh, the I guess it's like a smooth pursuit. Where you're
Yeah.
walking here and
Oh, cool.
I'm walking forward. I'm walking
And
backwards
you're
in
doing
the
this. You're
park.
doing this in public. Yeah.
Oh
Nice.
yeah, right, right. And and then as I started the uh, and it's like once I knew, because what happens with the hormone therapy
Mm-hmm.
is your metabolism slows down, your appetite goes up, you lose muscle, you lose bone density, in addition to all the other things you can imagine not having.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's like, all right, there's no room to wait, and I had done enough research that your only counter is strength training and working out. That's the only way you keep these things from happening.
And did you come to that realization completely on your own? Like I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, and I imagine you're getting all this, you're getting bombarded by information from all these medical professionals who honestly are probably setting the bar pretty low, because
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
so many people are
And,
not,
and,
they're
and
either
they're,
not willing to go and
yeah.
fight the fight that you're
Well,
fighting, or they're just not educated enough.
by the time I showed up with my medical oncologist, who's awesome. I mean, he's written some of the national guidelines. I mean, I couldn't be in better hands. But they only have so much time
Right.
in front of you. They're not going to, well, here's the workout you ought to do.
Exactly.
And so I had already done enough research to know that that strength training was going to be critical, that weight bearing stuff. So um, Kim and I, she's a labor and delivery nurse. She knows her stuff too. So she's done a lot of, uh, stuff, those, menopause, how to deal with that, hormones, all that kind of stuff. So she was already in that space a little bit and had purchased a weighted vest to kind of add things. So I got one. So we would, and this was after I got diagnosed, but we're walking through our neighborhood with, she's got her 20-pound vest. I got my 32-pound vest. We're just going. I mean, and she walks fast. I mean, we're like sub 16-minute pace, weighted vest, 90 degrees, somewhere in Indiana,
Nice.
people are, you know, looking at us like we're crazy. Everybody's a comedian in the neighborhood, and But we just did that, and that was just something. And even as I was going through radiation, it was like come home, take a nap, put the vest on, go. And so that's kind of our mindset there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I would still, I do your workouts, pretty consistently. And I was blessed, by our church leadership and all that. And they were like, hey, we're going to give you time off,
That's cool.
which was a real gift because you really only get one shot to figure it out and kind of build the systems and habits and all that.
Right.
And that's multidimensional. That's mental health, that's spiritual, it's physical, it's diet, it's all the things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
So, I had that opportunity. So I had a little bit more time to get things dialed in and work at. So, but I think initially it was some of I'm like, I would get up and I would do these, some of the breathing drills and that
Yeah.
would give me more energy.
That's great. So at that point, after kind of finding some of those live calls on
Yeah.
breathing, and
Right.
I'm sure the light bulb kind of went off when we started talking about breathing as a supportive thing
Right.
for the training that you want to do.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm so glad you were able to like pick up on
Yeah, and
that
you'd
and
even
grasp
said,
it.
"Hey, get one of those little expand along things." So
Nice.
I got a couple of those. So
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Nice.
yeah,
Yeah. You went all in with that. That's great.
right,
So I remember a few of our exchanges a while back when you started experiencing some progress, because I think I remember having a brief conversation, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you were exploring a lot of the joint mobility drills as
yeah,
well and doing some of the nerve glides. And I remember you being like, "Hey, I think I'm starting to feel some progress with my feet."
hmm
Right. And so I remember that conversation. And so, yeah, can you
yeah,
just talk a little bit about
yeah. So
like the progress you were feeling with
yeah,
whatever it is that you were focusing on?
yeah, so my feet are numb. And like right after I used to run in the pool, like at a local Y, and I got home and looked at my feet and they were all blistered up. I didn't feel them. I had to get like the water socks and all that. So that's gotten a little bit better, but I've always had numbness in my feet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like I don't know, one of your little things where it might have even been a little social media thing, but it was like a foot wave
Yep.
and then a ball of foot circle,
Yep.
or no, like where you try to spread your toes,
Yeah.
which I'm horrible at that. I tried to do the foot yoga or toe yoga back in PT, and it's like I got nothing here, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the left side. So then you know, my ball of foot circles I wouldn't write home about, but I'm making some progress. So
Nice.
I had this routine where before I walked, I would do those things. I would do that progression,
Yeah.
and I would do um, we kind of do that forward, side, back, um,
Oh yeah, like the compass lunges and
yeah,
then
yeah,
with
yeah,
the yep.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, wow, I mean, it's literally, if I don't do that versus I do that, it's a 20% better experience for me if I do it.
Nice.
I mean, it's just that's the way it is. So, um, I was doing those, and it was like, wow, that's really helpful to me.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And the breathing exercises as a means of energy, how are you currently using that? Because I know when we had that exchange in our community,
Yeah.
you had listed a lot of the different things you were practicing. I know you like all the air hunger stuff. I know that you're doing some vestibular work.
Yeah.
Kat, can you kind of lay out a little bit of what your current routine is?
Yeah. So, the whole routine, or just,
Yeah, your favorite parts.
yeah,
The stuff you feel is the most valuable, and I'm really interested in. I like this conversation about using the breathing exercises to have more energy.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
I think that's huge because a lot of people, struggle when they have different health issues or pain issues that are holding them back, and it takes a lot of energy.
yeah,
So using breathing as a means of supporting your practice is just so awesome. But here's the thing, not that many people go all in on it, regardless of how many times I tell them to do it.
Yeah,
But you have.
yeah. I mean, I've got a couple of those expand along things. I've got my, I mean, I was a couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready to preach, and I'm just like tired. I got a coaching buddy. And I'm like, man, just slap me upside the head, wake me up, um, because I get a fatigue that's you just can't explain it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like a wave that comes on you, and so I'm kind of back in a room getting ready to speak, and I'm like, I'm, I'm literally doing air hunger squats, just trying to get a little bit of energy, right?
Oh, that's yeah.
Little bit
You're
more
like
energy. Yeah.
you're like an athlete preparing for
Yeah. Yeah. I
competition.
mean,
Yeah.
you get the adrenaline going, and,
Hmm.
it's a high pressure communication, and love doing it, but it's, it does take some energy,
Yeah.
but anyway, so I would say every day I do something,
Nice.
and I really, even after your call yesterday, you've given me some things to think about. Because I've also, by the way, I got sleep apnea too,
Hmm.
uh, and the CPAP never worked for me.
Mm.
Um, so I'm, and even you were talking about O2 sat being like 99, and mine's usually so it might be a little elevated.
Hmm.
So I want to kind of build that CO2 tolerance a little bit more and see if I can dial that in a little bit more.
Sure.
But practically, so I start every workout with some type of breathing drill,
Nice.
whether it's air hunger, it's the expand a lung. I recently got a little mini trampoline rebounder.
Oh, cool.
Because I'm like, that's had a friend at church. It's like, why don't you try this? And sure, why not, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I've got my coordination chart, because I've got some cerebellar stuff, and I'm like, okay, let's add some complexity to this. So,
Yeah, that's when you know somebody's really into neuro when they
right,
have a coordination chart on every wall in the house.
right. So I got that, and I'm like, okay, let's do nasal breathe. Let's do some air hunger. Let's do some nasal breathing. Because one of the things you had suggested was, hey, if you do 10, 15 minutes of kind of light nasal breathing cardio, that's going to give you a little boost.
Yeah.
I kind of start doing that, and sometimes I do like some Tabata stuff, on the rebounder, because I can,
Like a higher intensity, like
yeah,
intervals. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
like 20 seconds as hard as you can go, 10-second
Hmm.
reps,
Hmm.
about 6.5 minutes, that type of thing. But I
Yep.
really was finding some magic in the um, coordination charts with some nasal breathing, and just kind of making up my own, different stuff with that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's fun.
So that's been, because I'm like, all the visual stuff, you seem to incorporate it when you're looking at the coordination chart.
Definitely.
And I think with some of my left side cerebellar patterns and all that, I'm like, okay, let's add more complexity,
Yeah, nice.
to it. So, but I think the breathing has been, it may be as important as anything that
Yeah.
I've done on the
Yeah,
program.
that's great. That's really cool. Well, let's see. So obstacles. I had made a note for myself to ask you about this because I imagine you got good days, you got bad days.
Right.
You know, what are some of like those obstacles that you might hit on any given day, and how does that change your game plan?
Yeah. So, and one of the other thing that's really turned me on with the program, and I got a little bit of this prior to the course, but the whole threat bucket concept.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a new perspective on pain.
it's such a useful
I
way
mean, even,
to
yeah,
understand health.
I mean, it's like, we're both in the hope business,
Yeah,
and we deal, I mean, I deal with, in my own threat bucket, but other people, and you just deal with, people. I mean, life's hard,
yeah,
but so for me, it's having that perspective, even to say, this is just it's just in my threat bucket.
Right.
You know, it's just another thing, right? So
That's how I use it too, just like that.
just
I love
another
that.
thing, right? So it's like what I have noticed is I don't have the same level of resilience. My threat bucket is not as big as it used to be.
Right, makes sense.
It's just I don't have that same. So like even this week where I'm like, okay, I had a long board meeting Tuesday night, a couple tough meetings this week. I'm gonna teach Sunday. I got the grandbabies Friday night. I'm like, okay, there's a lot. I better look ahead and figure out a way to manage that a little bit better. Because before I just go 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 go.
Sure.
You I mean, I started. You're coaching and it's 80 hours a week and all that kind of stuff, and you're grading
Mm-hmm.
papers. So
Yeah, right.
when you start that way, you build up some tolerance. But I think for me, bad days can be when I have extra stress, um, or just emotionally it can be hard sometimes.
Right.
And like Kim and I, and she's awesome, and I can't imagine somebody going through this without a supportive spouse that you can communicate with. And I've got a we've got a friend who's a therapist that we see once a month, just to like there's a lot to process. You need
Right.
from the outside to process some stuff. So kind of like proactively having some of those things has been important for us. So because there's days where you just get sad,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, my um the over under on me is probably 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
just to be realistic. So you think, okay, my that means my oldest granddaughter is going to be 14. There's a reality to that. That's so there's like I'm super grateful for what I've been, and it's like going back to my father-in-law. He said, "Oh, your dad's got a fighting chance to be a Paul someday." And I'm like, "Well, hey, I'm there. I'm at some level. I'm playing with house money. This is great." Um, but then I'm like, "Wow, I really love these people, and life is good, and I got the eternal perspective and all that, and that's great. But there's also some just sadness
You're right.
that that can happen. So it's
Of
almost
course.
this simultaneously grief, gratitude, and you can experience both, but then get off the couch and go work out.
I was
That's
gonna. I was gonna ask you. So
just
how do you respond? Like how do
yeah, you
you?
just get up. You just
Yeah.
got to go.
You
You
just
just got
gotta
to go.
go.
You just got to go
I
because
like it.
and it's like and with the hormone therapy, your body when your body tells you no, you have to say yes.
Hmm.
You just have to go. Now you got to be smart about it. And you had said something about how do you know when to stick with the workout or just pull the plug.
Right.
And if you kind of make some progress and start to feel better during the workout, and that's usually what would happen for me. you know
Sure.
so
Once you get moving.
sometimes you gotta put in the old classic rock and
Yep. There you go.
lift the weights and kind of dial in some of that. um, uh, yeah, and just get up and go. And when you don't feel like it, you got to go. I mean, I had a uh, on the wall in my garage. I every time I'd take a walk, I'd write that date down. I kind of stopped doing that, but for a season, that was like I just got to commit to do it.
That's.
And
I like it.
and having Kim with me was great. And I got great parents, kids, family. Couldn't ask for a more supportive system. But there is a sense in which you know you got to go. You got to get up and go. And I mean, there's been a handful of dark days, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never started a workout or I've done a workout or done a walk and said, "Well, I wish I hadn't have done that."
Right.
So and there was tough, with without going into too much detail, with the hormone therapy, with the radiation, you get some bowel bladder stuff. Uh, so, we've got a park, and there's a restroom at the park. So, that matters, right?
Yep, it
I mean, the
matters.
basics of life, sometimes it gets down to that, that basic. But so, and there's a cumulative effect to the treatment.
Hmm.
It's not like I did chemo last round, before, and it's rough, but then you're done. So there's a mindset to that that's, I think, a little bit easier than this is
Yeah,
forever kind of
right.
thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't had any haven't I don't think I've had any physical setbacks like injuries,
Hmm.
which has just been such a blessing. You
That's
know,
awesome.
I mean, even the other day, I woke up kind of funny, and it's like, oh, there's a little back threat. Okay, let's do
Yep.
some nerve glides, do some things. Yeah, it'll be all right.
Ah, I love that.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's awesome that you've got you're equipped with some strategies now.
yeah, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So you've touched on some really good advice for anybody. Um, I want to just give you another chance to talk about just some more, like, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that was going through a similar situation as you? Any kind of health complication that is, interfering with their goals. Like what can you leave our listeners with in addition to what you just described?
Yeah, I would say, um, you mean specific in the neuro stuff, or just life in general,
Just
or
life in general. Like it's more for me, like the neuro stuff's great, of course, and you're tactically going through that extremely well. Like I've been super impressed with how you've been able to utilize the threat bucket concept, build a toolbox for yourself, figure out what's helping you, and move forward with that. So tactically, man, you're on point. And I feel like the part that's so hard for people is just the process.
yeah,
Like what piece of advice could you give somebody that was, in a similar situation to you?
yeah. I mean, you've got to have hope, and I think that, one of the, without getting too, I don't, I won't preach to the listeners, but because I know
you could
everybody's
play it like a football coach then if you want.
right, right. But it's like, there's the psychologist, Henry Cloud, and he said, um, he's written some good stuff on parenting. He's got a great concept called boundaries. That's money. But anyway, he said, everybody needs a plumbing system to filter out the crap of life.
Hmm.
And whatever that is, we need, whether it's grief, it's injury, it's discouragement, whatever those things are. We need not just a one and done, but a system to filter some of that out.
Right.
So, that's people, that's practices, that's, from my perspective, there's some spiritual resources in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's all interconnected. It's not just, well, my workouts are over here, and how I think is over here. I mean, there's a mindset that you've got to have, and there's a resource. And I think we need help. We need multiple streams of help.
Right.
It's not just, well, I can do this workout program, or I can do this diet program, or I can go talk to some, but to be proactive. And even as you use that threat bucket metaphor, and I've got my book, I print all the stuff off, and I'm looking at, what are the streams of help that
Yeah. It's
help you
amazing.
build tolerance,
I'm right there with you, and I think I'm almost visualizing a new graphic where there's a plumbing system coming from
right.
the threat bucket, and it's leading you to another bucket,
It
right?
is.
And in
Yeah.
that, and that might be a different bucket where you're
Yeah.
you're talking about these other support systems that
Right.
matter so much in dismantling the threat, community, people, your
Yeah.
significant other, all that stuff.
Yeah. I've got two friends, and they're both stage 4 cancer survivors too. And I've introduced them to your program, and I think they're going to take the course. But we
Nice.
exchange strategies. There's certain crazy things that we eat. There's certain workouts that we do. We walk together. There's no replacement for that community support. And I
Right.
think that whatever content people have, there's no shortage of good content, in the world.
Hmm.
But community is a scarce resource. And if you can
Right.
pair really good content with great community, I just think that's a huge part of it. And I think what's been really helpful, even specifically within the system, is to have uh, ways of measuring progress.
Hmm.
Because and sometimes you have to change the scoreboard. And it's like, for our life, it's like, well, it's going to look different than we thought it was going to at this point. And I think people run into that, and it's like they're discouraged because I can't do what I wanted to do, or this season of my life isn't going to be what I thought it was, or it's harder and busier being a parent than
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So how do I find the small victories?
That's
Uh,
huge.
and like the other day, I got almost a lateral glide, like, which opened up a little bit in my upper trap, which helped me on a shoulder press.
Nice.
And when your life is kind of going, I don't want to say downhill, but physically you're fighting just to maintain, right?
Right.
And it's like, oh wow, I'm actually a little bit stronger physically than when I started this thing. So,
Nice.
but it's like you got to find people, um, and I think people just have to commit to the system,
Hmm.
and it's not nothing's a quick fix.
Right.
Nothing's a quick fix.
That's a huge point.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the ability, what I found especially helpful with this system in particular is it's specific to you.
Right.
It's your issues. It's the things that are in your threat bucket. And I think just building proactively building out that plumbing system
Yeah.
is, what I don't know if that metaphor makes sense, but
I love it. No, I've literally can visualize that plumbing system. It's like
yeah,
the things that we can do to dismantle the threat in our bucket. It has to exit some way,
right.
right?
When, and I look at people, and this is me on a Sunday morning. I'm doing some gait analysis on people, and I'm talking to somebody, and they're like, well, I got this back pain, and I'm like, hey, we could talk about Jesus, but let me give you this nerve glide here, right? Yeah. So, um, and I think that's just kind of fun. And in my world, everything's connected,
That's great.
and it's like people, I see more and more. It's harder for people to finish strong in life. It's harder for them to reach their goals because of their pain.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And it's like whatever we can do to help people overcome that. And everybody wants a quick fix, and they want a pill or they want a surgery, and it's like, yeah, not saying you don't need that sometimes, but
Right.
there are other ways to do it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. It's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Um, Man, it's been really nice to meet you face to
Yeah.
face and to have this
Yeah.
discussion. You're a warrior, Jason, and you've been an amazing addition to our community. We really just wish you the best and good health, and look forward to continuing our work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm just super thankful for you and Alicia and what you're doing, and even the community too, and I think part of what I see ahead for me and for others, it's what's the way to leverage that community a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
What are those, I would just encourage people in the community, just continue to reach out, support one another. And, I've benefited tremendously from the course, but I feel like I know just a little bit. And, but just continuing to, try things out, get feedback, this works, support one another. And that's a huge, huge piece of this. Yeah.
For sure. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think what you're going to need to do is take a nap, wake up, do some air hunger, and get ready for your grandkids.
For sure.
Oh, man. Thank you so much again for taking the time to come on the podcast. This has been awesome. And yeah, again, look forward to continuing our work together.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to get to talk to you and see you face to face. So, yeah. And I'm cheering you guys on. I think you're on the, you're out in front on the forefront of, I think, what's to come, and keep at it. Keep fighting the good fight. Yep.
Yes, you as well. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Jason.
All right. Thanks, Taylor. Take care.
All right, there it is. If you want to join Jason and many others inside our community who are improving their health and performance using our brain-based philosophy, you definitely need to check out our neuro courses. And if you're new to all this neuro talk, the best resource for you at this point is going to be our free Neuro Masterclass. And I'll put all the appropriate information to go with it, including links, in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening.